Welcome back, everybody. In this video, we're going to talk about data validation. So basically, we're going to look at putting restrictions on certain cells. So maybe we want certain cells that can only have a date in them, or we only want to use a date between certain ranges, or only offer certain options. So this is a way to limit the amount of editing others can do to our Excel workbook or Excel file, or even individual sheets and things. So this can be nice, one, because again, not everybody is as Excel savvy. So if you're concerned about other users maybe creating errors in the document, in the file somewhere, then you can put restrictions on the cells like we're going to do in this video here. And also just to make it easier sometimes. So for people who are not as Excel savvy, if you limit what they can put in, this is actually probably helpful for them to know what exactly should be entered in which cell. So let's start looking at that here. And we're going to do a little bit of work first. So we're going to go to the donor sheet. And I'd like to start automating this new add donor piece here. If you go over to donations, again, I could always just look and say, okay, the next person is number 446 and so on. But again, it'd be really nice if I could get some of this to automate on its own. So I'm going to use a formula here instead. And it's going to look like this. I'm going to say equals, and it's going to be max. So we're going to do a maximum. And I'm going to use the donations table. So I'm going to go over to the donations sheet here. So I'm referencing that. And then what I want to enter next, I'm going to put a bracket in. I'm specifically referencing donor number. And then what I want to do to that is I want to take the maximum donor number from that donations worksheet, and I want to add 1 to it, right? I want to give it the next one in line. So that is what this formula is doing here. And you can see it did bump to 446. So if I go back to my donations page, it was 445, and then it bumps automatically to 446. So that again is really nice. And then as we update this table, it will update appropriately too. So I won't have to continuously keep checking for what the next number is. So that is just an additional little piece here. So what we want to do next is I'm going to go to cell C6, and this should be the date of the donation. Now, obviously, users should be entering a date here. And nothing else. So I want to make sure that that restriction is in place. So what I'm going to do is I go up to the data tab, and you want the data validation button. Now on my screen, it looks like this. Sometimes it's much smaller on the top of the ribbon. When I work on my laptop at home, it's much smaller because my screen is smaller at home, but it looks like this. You have a check mark and you have kind of a red X. That's your data validation tool. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and you should get a box like this that opens. And right now you can see that it's set that we allow any value in this box at all, right? So I can put anything I want in here and it's perfectly fine. But we'd like to have some restrictions there. So I'm going to instead change this to a date. So I want to make sure people are entering dates. And I want to be even more specific. I would like the dates to go between April 5th, 2024 and July 1st, 2025. So perhaps this fundraiser is going on for a very specific amount of time. This is when we're planning to collect donations. So I don't really want people entering dates outside of this range. And once I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now let's try typing in a date that doesn't work. So August 1st, 2025 would be too late. And when I tried to enter it, it does give me a stop, basically. It says this value doesn't match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell. So it tells the user, hey, you can't enter this date. So you can retry, or if you click cancel, it will just clear that out for you. So it will not let you enter anything outside that range. And this is a stop in Excel. So this is the strongest form of sort of data validation here, where the user is not allowed to enter anything other than what's already in place there. If you type something that is valid, let's say 9/18 or 9/18/2024, then it goes in perfectly fine. So you only get the warning if it's not matching what should be entered. Now, there's also different warning messages you could give instead. So maybe you don't want to totally restrict them completely and to stop it. Maybe you just want to give a warning. So what I could do here is I'm going to still select cell C6. I'm going to go back to data, and again, up to data validation here. And I'm going to change this a little bit. On my error alert tab, right now it's set to stop, which means it will not let the user enter anything that is not valid according to how we created it. So we can change this instead, maybe to a warning. And I want to make sure that this is checked. So we want to show the alert. And the title of my warning is going to be possible invalid date. And I can also pick an error message. So maybe I say the fundraising campaign is scheduled. Excuse me, for 4/5/2024 through 7/1/2025. All right, my typing is very bad today. And then I can go ahead and click OK. So what happens now when I type in an invalid date is instead of it stopping me completely, it gives me a little bit lighter message, a little bit more of a warning. So it says, hey, the fundraising campaign is scheduled for 4/5/2024 through 7/1/2025, right? So it gives me that warning of, hey, there's a possible invalid date. So it lets you to know, oh, hey, maybe I made a mistake here and I should go double check that before I enter it. If you want to continue though, you can select yes, and it will allow the user to enter an invalid date. So that is important to note here, even though that it warns you, it does not stop you. So it's a much lesser warning there. So that could be fine if that's what you want, right? Maybe you know you're going to allow some exceptions to the date rule. So you want the warning, but you do want to let people put other dates in. So that's another option there. We can also put a message as well. So again, I'm going to hit yes for now. I'm going to go back to cell C6. I'm going to go back up to data validation. I'm going to go to input message this time. And under input message, I'm going to put a title of donation dates. And my message is going to be donations are collected from 4/5/2024 through 7/1/2025. And I can go ahead and click OK here. And now what happens is that's a little bit different, right? So this is not really a warning. It's just a message to the user that, hey, you know, when I click on that cell, it pops up. Donation dates are from here to here. So again, it's much lighter. It's really just kind of providing more, you know, information there as well. All right, so that's one example of how to, you know, offer some restrictions on your cells. I'm going to do another example now. So I'm going to go to cell C7, and this is the donation here, and we have very specific donation amounts, right? If you look on the right here, donations are coming in as either $250, $500, $1,000, $2,500, etc. So these are really specific amounts that we're accepting for donations. So again, maybe I would like to restrict my user from inputting just these values here. I don't want them putting in something different. So I'm going to create a restriction for that. So I'm going to click the cell that I want to restrict. Again, you're up here at data, and you want the one that says data validation. Remember, if your ribbon is smaller, you should still see this image right here. It may be tiny without the words data validation like it is on my laptop at home, but you'll see that right here. So I can go ahead and click that. I'm going to go back to the settings tab here. And for allow value, I want to click list. So I'm going to use a list that I already have created in Excel. And you can see it's right here. So here's my list of values that I'm allowing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the source box. And then I'm going to go ahead and select cells J5 through, let's see, what is this, J15 there. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. There we go. So now what happens is, this is, I think, really interesting. When I click on that cell, this little drop down appears and I select one of the valid options. So this is one of my favorite ones of the list, because it just, one, makes it really easy for the user to know what they need to type in. And again, you're putting that restriction in place. You can also go ahead and, I'm going to do it again and use a list and create it on the fly. I'm going to data validation, go back to settings. Again, I'm going to go ahead and say list. This time for my source, though, I'm actually going to type in my list. So this works fine for smaller lists. So maybe my donations can come in either in person via phone call, online, or other. I do want to put commas in between my options here, and I can go ahead and click OK. And again, if you notice now, there's a little drop down, and I can select the type of donation it is. So that list feature I think is really nice. It just makes it so much easier to use for different people who are not as familiar with Excel, or maybe would put in wrong information, right? So it helps to just limit those errors there as well. All right, the next thing I want to show you is how to create a custom validation rule. So let's see, next we're going to go and select cells C9 through C15. Now, I'm going to select the entire range here because I want them all to be the same validation rule. Each cell can only have one validation rule. So these cells will all have the same rule, and I can do it at the same time. I'm going to go back up to data validation. I'm going to, let's see, go to allow on my settings feature here, and I'm going to go ahead and click custom. And then this will allow me to do a few things. One, I can click or unclick the ignore blank feature. So I'm going to deselect it because I don't want to ignore blanks. I don't want blanks put in, basically. I want to flag them if there's missing information. So I'm going to make sure that is deselected so that blanks will actually get flagged. And I'm going to use a formula here, and I'm going to use the following formula. It's going to be is equals not. And then I'm going to use a nested formula is blank cell C9. And let's see, I have too many parentheses there. I do. And this is going to test whether a cell is blank, basically, and create that message there. So basically, we're looking at, we want to make sure cells are not blank. I'm selecting C9 here because C9 is the first cell that I selected for my validation rule. I'm not using $ signs because I do want that validation rule to continue down to cells C10, 11, and so on. If you wanted to restrict that, then you would put $ signs there, but I don't want them because I do want the same rule to follow down with that formula there as well. I'm going to go to my alert error, and this time we're going to just click information. And we're going to type in a title called missing data. Excuse me. And then on my error message, I'm going to write, do you mean to leave this cell blank? I'm going to click OK to apply that. I just noticed I have a spelling error there. That's all right. We'll leave it. And then I can go ahead and try it out. So let's see if it works. So maybe I pretend to type in something here, and I'm going to leave it blank. And I get that message, missing data. Do you, again, watch my typo, mean to leave this cell blank? Now it's going to let me. So unless I put the stop feature on it, I'm going to be able to override it. So if I just select a warning or information, then I can override this and say, okay, yeah, I did mean to leave it blank. And it'll do it for the other cells as well. So did you mean to leave this cell blank? So again, it's just warning the user that, hey, these should really be filled in. Are you sure you want to leave it blank? And it's going to work for all those cells in our group. So again, just something to watch out for again with that, data validation here. If I go over to my error, the stop is the full one where a user is not able to edit it if it doesn't meet the requirements, period. Warning and information are a little bit lighter. So they're very similar where they kind of warn the user, hey, you're doing something potentially wrong, but they do allow the user to continue doing it. So those two are a little bit lighter if you will allow for some, differences. But if you don't, then you want to use the stop feature, which again will not let the user enter anything that's outside the validation rules there.